to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Trish.
Mrs. Brew?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Mr. Oja?
Here.
Mr. Pop?
Here.
We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Do you have any changes?
I do not.
Okay. Can I have a motion on the approval of the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda. Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Any questions on the minutes, or I need a motion?
I'd like to make a change.
Okay.
Approve 18-135. It says that unanimously approve resolution 2018, and underneath there's a nay.
Okay.
I believe that's a glitch. That's all I have.
Anyone else? If not, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of June 18th.
Support. As amended.
Yeah, as amended.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
We'll move on to the approval of manifest 2018-13. Mr. Pop, you have any questions?
I have none for tonight.
Mr. Kramer?
I had one on there was a repair under Parks and Recs. I'll keep looking for it, Candy. You can come back.
I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Menegini?
No questions, just one little comment where for our liability and property insurance, it costs for the year a little over $160,000. That's all I have.
Mr. Oja?
No questions.
It's the pressure tanks and parts. It's on page 3 of 8 for 746. To the irrigation system, to the baffle. What is that, Ray?
I think that's for the irrigation out at Marion Park for setting that up on the potable water
Okay,
for the baseball field. I'll double check on that, but I think that's what it's for.
all right. Thank you. No other questions?
I have no questions, so do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve manifest 2018-13 in the amount of $552,223.23.
Support.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to the questions from the last meeting. Mr. Anderson, read.
Was there any questions on the last manifest, or at the last meeting that we can go over? Was there
Yeah,
questions
that-
asked?
Yeah.
Just so we can give it out to the public?
Actually,
That's
from
what I was just gonna do.
a couple meetings ago, there was a question about the DTE bill out at the wastewater plant. There's a process question. First of all, there was a 2-month billing, and then there's also a process issue concerning the Headworks building, and it comes down to, it's not simple HVAC like you do in an occupied building. There's actually a chemical process that has to be vented out of the building, so that's part of what we're going to be dealing with. In the last meeting, we had a question, let's see, concerning on the maintenance software. There was a question on that particular issue, and we're going to have to do some research. That wasn't in the original project plan because we weren't quite sure how that was all going to fit in. So that's why that was held out of the project. And we did give you the breakdown of the MyRec history. So, and then, let's see, there was one other one here. We showed you the project, the terminal supply company, the questions on the bill, those are for cable ties, there was a whole series of litany of items on that bill. Not cable ties like we think about, that was cabling, cable for electrical, for equipment. And then that L&S warranty work, that's not warranty work. What that was is, that particular lift station is we can only use that as single phase instead of three phase. And so there's a step-down converter in that building, and that was actually what they worked on. And that wasn't part of the project at all.
That was my question on the energy, why it was so much, and you had said it was for 2 months billing, and I'll repeat what I said the last time. In this day and age, I find it hard to believe with our EPA and so everybody energy efficient and that, where we wind up with a system like this. Somewhere, somehow, someplace along the line, I don't know, it's just not energy efficient, and this system obviously isn't, and why it was not more efficient, I don't have the answer for it, and I don't seem to get any.
I can give you some information. I mean, what happens is you have to recirculate, or you have to remove that air, that process air out of the headworks building. You can't recirculate air movement.
I understand that.
So we have to vent it out, and then, by doing that, you have to use the outside air. So if it's warmer outside and you're sending that air through, or if it's colder outside, I mean, you're dealing a little differently than what you can deal with in a more of a controlled environment, like the city hall or a building.
I understand that, it's just it should have been a different system, but that's easy to say now. Maybe there isn't a different system, I don't know.
Can I make an additional comment about that? I can't.
Then come up to the podium.
There was still some tweaking going on when those bills were generated. Okay, so that's.
Yeah, that's in here.
But the way that headworks building is by law, because of the sewage gases in there, you have to continually exhaust the air out of the building. 24/7, 365. Okay, we talked about, can you put that on a timer for when it comes on in the morning, if there's an emergency, the guys can't go in there. They cannot go in that building if there's any concern about safety because of the gases that are generated. So you really, to be totally safe, you have to ventilate and exhaust air 24/7, 365. Now, when it's warm, the intake air louver allows outside air to come in, because you don't care what the temperature is in there really. It's got to be warm enough so things don't freeze. You'd like to have it, there's no air conditioning in that building. You'd like to have it so the workers can work in there, but in the summertime, whatever the outside air temperature is what's going to come in when the exhausted air is put out. So in theory, if it's 95 degrees outside, it could be 95 degrees in that building. There's no air conditioning in the building. In the winter, and this was one thing that hadn't happened, and I was down there with it, there's been a lot of more explanation about how that whole system operates, and it's fairly complicated. But they have different ways that they can set the incoming air temperature. Okay, so in the wintertime, you have to heat the air is made up not by the outside louver being open with outside air. The heat exchanger unit or the heat unit provides the makeup air for what's being exhausted over here. Okay, and that air, when it's cold outside, has to be heated. Okay, and they have some controls that they've now become more familiar with to how they can regulate that so it's only as warm as it has to be. Okay, but in the wintertime, because of that, you've got natural gas use heating air to go in that building. And there is no really other way to do that, really.
Well, that's my question, is there another system?
I mean, you could
I mean, we can't do anything about it now, but...
This is, you know, and people have, this is standard in the industry stuff, okay? I mean, you could go way out of the box and think about some type of pellet burner, wood burner that puts there, and it doesn't lend itself to that really, the technology for that kind of stuff. For this kind of building, this headworks building at a wastewater treatment plant facility, this is what happens. And you've got to put heated air in there, and natural gas is what's down there as a service. So the guys have to, it's going to take this first winter for them to play with this, if you will, to really figure out how they can minimize the energy use. And that's what they're going to be doing. So, you know, nobody wants to spend more money on energy consumption than they have to. But this facility is what it is, and the guys have to figure out exactly how to tweak the various control portions of this so that they try to minimize the energy use. That's what they're going to be doing this winter. They were not totally up to speed on all of that when it first got going. So, I don't know if that helps.
Thanks, Bruce. Anything else?
No, that's...
Okay.
that's it.
If anyone wishes to address the council on any agenda items, may do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the record. Nobody? Okay. We're going to move on to Resolution 2018-14, Property Deed Restriction Extension. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, this is a issue that came up at the last meeting. Went through in detail about Mr. Hale and his property reversion clause. This is a third-party situation where Mr. Hale bought the property from Midwest Leasing, who was owned by Joe LaFave, and this particular, we were able to transfer through documentation or through legal means the 2-year build-out requirement that we have for selling city properties. I did turn this over to the city's attorney and wanted to make sure that if we were to exercise that 2-year provision, that we were definitely legal in how we handle it. It provided some additional information for council to consider for this evening, and I guess at this point all I can do is open up for questions. So the council's pleasure is on it. I know Mr. Hale's not here this evening to answer any additional questions, but does council have any for staff?
What he has on there right now, was that the building he put on there?
No, he has nothing on there right now?
There is nothing.
No, he has a camper. So that is our issue. He does have an approved building permit that he was required to put together following the approval to sell the property or to accept the sale of the property. And that would have to be dealt with in the paperwork moving forward.
Do we have any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to let Grant take over. Mr. Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Brew. Frankly, again, it comes back to council courtesy, how you wish to proceed. One of the things I think that council has discussed in the past is the balancing act between making sure these folks move forward in a timely manner, making sure we have development within our community, the whole purpose of selling city-owned property. I think going back to Mr. LaFave, when he made promises to develop this area and improve it, I know there's been some sales out there. We've heard from some folks as well that have built out there, some that are building currently as well. Mr. Hale is one of the individuals that has bought property and has yet to build out there. Pursuant to the sale terms, we had them execute a third-party agreement. We have a basically the property has to come through us, and we have to approve the sale when it goes through. And we had Mr. Hale, and I believe his wife as well, execute an agreement that they would comply with the requirements of the transfer and the original deed restrictions that were on the original property with Lakeside. I think it was actually then traded or transferred to Midwest Leasing as a subsequent transferring company, but nevertheless, the deed restrictions continued. Frankly, it's up to council how they wish to proceed. I know that there are a number of considerations, both looking at empathy and also a straight line, black and white approach. There is no right or wrong answer. It's more of a policy consideration. I know this has come up before. We've had this a number of times since I've been on the council. I know it's not an easy decision, and it's something that the council has to look back and forth at the circumstances. And I know this has come up a number of different times before with different landowners here in the community. Frankly, again, it's up to council. If the council chooses to immediately exercise its request for right of reversion or to move forward with allegations that the condition subsequent has not been met, namely the building or failure to build, the next move would be to file a motion or a complaint to quiet title. Alternatively, one of the things that Ray and I have spoken about in the past is streamlining this issue to a degree, and that was the other option that I provided to council for consideration as well, which is a forbearance agreement, which in essence has, in this case, it would have the Hales acknowledging that they have not complied with the deed restriction, acknowledging the original agreement and reaffirming that agreement, and indicating or having an agreement signed by all that we are all acknowledging you have not done so, that you are in essence receiving one last chance, that you execute a deed reverting the property back to the city to avoid us having to file a complaint to quiet title, and that you set a time in there, whether or not that be 6 months, a year, 18 months, 24 months, whatever the council determines to be appropriate. And you indicate to them that they have to sign this agreement to forego or forbear the proceedings to quiet title. That would be another option, but that's one of the things that Mr. Anderson and I have discussed as far as streamlining the process, taking out some of the questions as far as what would a court say, or is there any loopholes or issues with language. This is obviously an issue in which somebody has paid a sum of money, a fair sum of money to purchase property. And I think that looking at the circumstances, it's a tough question for the council to make, have an answer to. When somebody buys a piece of property, they take that deed and they hold it and they have plans, and sometimes they don't always go according to plan. It's up to council how it wishes to proceed.
So will we hang on to the deed the whole while? And then if he doesn't make the provision, then?
Yes, ma'am. What the forbearance agreement would say, and what I provided a copy of it to the council, as far as a proposal, would be an acknowledgement again that the individuals have not met the property, the covenants, if you will, the requirements to build within the 2-year period, that we all acknowledge that, including the Hales, and that they execute a deed to be held in escrow by my law firm pending the occupancy permit being granted, and that it also have a residential structure consistent with his 2016 building permit, which Mr. Anderson has reviewed in the past. It complied with applicable zoning rules. It included a residential structure that met the applicable zoning rules, and I think complied with the intent of, frankly, both the Hales and the city. So I think it's important to reference that 2016 building permit as well. And then we would hold the deed, and upon building and getting the occupancy permit, we would sign a release, as we've agreed in the past with all other purchasers.
I was just going to ask, we have done that. We never not done it, right?
No, if you're in compliance, you sign a release because we need to clear title. And otherwise, it's going to have a cloud on the title. I mentioned that to Mr. LaFave when these parcel sales started going through and they started coming to our attention, and to the realtor as well, that, you know, this is something that has to be cleaned up and make sure that the release is executed so that it's off of the land. The mortgagor, the bank would require it. The person who has the property, of course, is going to want to have that in place as well. So they have a free, clean title. And once the property is built upon, the city doesn't want to have anything, beyond its initial concerns involved in it as well. So we would then file a release and clean up that title. So again, it's up to council's consideration.
Oh, I see that, this is the second time around for that piece of property. The last time we let Mr. LaFave have the extension on it. In the meantime, he sold it to Mr. Hale. So on that piece of property, technically, it's twice. But Mr.
it's
Hale,
different
it's the
people,
first
so
time
you
for
gotta-
him. Yeah, it's a different time for Mr. Hale. And I realize there are extenuating circumstances there. But I see the recommendation is to go with the 18 months, which would give them two building cycles.
And hang on, and us have the deed.
Yeah. But,
And then we don't run into the same thing, right?
Well, at that point, it becomes much more clean. I mean, I would suggest that it's clean now, but certainly whenever you involve a court and move forward with trying to have property reverted, it can have issues, and what I'm trying to do is minimize those issues, if you will. And by having this forbearance agreement with the deed executed, occupancy permit is not obtained, and he is not moving forward, and having not done so, the agreement indicates, as I provided in the memo, we filed the deed.
I know in past years, they've had issues trying to get the property back, and the other people have won it. And hopefully that the writing is all cleaned up on it now, the deed. But for what it's worth, last time around, I voted no, not to give it back to Mr. LePage.
Any other comments? What would council like to do with that? Anybody have any recommendations? What,
Well, my feeling is we should go ahead with the forbearance agreement like Mr. Carlson described, with a 18-month for what's in the packet, or with an 18-month time period to give him to build that, with, as long as they meet everything, as long as they're willing to sign that and sign the title, do everything they need to do to execute that agreement. We should allow them the 18 months to build on it.
I agree.
But that would need to be, because Resolution 2018-14 doesn't say that. It's just a pure extension, so it'd have to be reworded.
And I was reviewing that, Councilman Oja, as well, at the last sentence where it says, whereas the city council of the city of Norway approved I would suggest, looking at the resolution, it would include whatever time extension the council is requesting. And then there would have, and the parties shall execute a forbearance agreement memorializing the original terms of the sale, requiring construction of a residential structure consistent with the 2016 building permit, and execution of a deed reverting the property of the city as of whatever date the council wishes, held in escrow by Mount Solelo until occupancy permit has been granted.
One other option, just for clarity, would it be better to have, instead of an 18-month, have to a date of December 1st, 2019, or something on that, or
Yeah,
or November
that's fine.
30th?
That would be fine.
That, I mean, it's just a little more clear, so that,
Right.
I would agree. I'd prefer to have just a specific date. I just think it's important for the motion to include reference to the 2016 building permit, date certain, and the execution of the deed as noted.
Say December 1st then.
No, Mr. Carlson, you've done extra work on this, right?
Nominal amount, but
Nominal.
I've done some. Yes.
Well, I think we're bending over backwards for this gentleman. I understand he's had a lot of issues, but I think he should pick up your tab.
I'm for that.
Can we add that into
Can we
your
do that?
resolution, Jeremy?
No, it wouldn't be part of my resolution. I think Mr. Carlson's our attorney, and if we're using him to do this, then we should be covering the cost of having our attorney do the agreement.
Yeah, 'cause it's-
I will indicate that it was relatively nominal. We had some of this forbearance agreement was something we had in-house, and that this would be something that I would urge the council to consider. There's a number of parcels, and one of the things the council is looking at, and again, I'm not suggesting you're not agree with you, Mr. Medina. Just for clarification, this is something that I think the council looking forward, if we have other parcel sales that we're looking at this evening. One of the things Ray and I have been trying to work on is trying to have a little bit more of a procedure in place in the event this comes up. Life happens with some folks, and sometimes even the best of intentions go sideways, and I think that's what I'm hearing from the council anyway. But at the same time, in the future, having a little bit more of a streamlined process.
That's what I was
so
going to
that,
ask you for. We don't run into this again.
It's something that can be used again in the future. And again, I'm not suggesting that what you're proposing is not a prudent thought for the taxpayers of our community. But at the same time, I was looking ahead to the future as well for hopefully streamlining this process in the event it ever comes up again. Because I think it probably will come up again with both parcel sales from the past as well as parcel sales in the future.
That needs to be looked at, so we don't keep running into the...
I'll make that as a motion, like we, with grant added. I'll make the motion that we approve 2018-14 as amended by grant added for the forbearance and title,
And he would have to bill by what?
December 1st of next year.
Support.
Wait, December 1st of next year? Wait a minute.
19.
Huh?
December 1st of 2019.
And would council require a deadline for the Hales and the city to sign that agreement? 14 days, 21 days?
Say that again, Grant.
Would council require
What do you normally see?
anywhere from 14 to 21 days?
See, 21 days.
Okay.
14 days will put us before the next meeting, all right?
It's okay. I'm okay with 14.
I don't know. Well, either or. Doesn't matter to me.
So you're saying December of...
2019.
December 1st?
Yes. And they would have to sign the agreement by the 16th, July 16th, 2018.
So that would be 14 days?
What was that date,
It said
Jeremy?
21.
July 16 is 14 days old.
Yeah, that's fine.
Did we do 14 or did...
14. Can everything be written up quick enough to get that to them, to give them reasonable time?
Have it done tomorrow. So just to clarify for our record, Mr. Oja, your motion is that the city of Norway would approve an extension on the original 2-year building requirement to December 1st of 2019, conditioned upon the parties executing a forbearance agreement memorializing the original terms of the sale, requiring construction of a residential structure consistent with the Hales 2016 building permit, and execution of a deed reverting the property to the city of Norway as of December 1st, 2019, if the conditions, if the building and the occupancy permit has not been completed and granted by then.
And
And the
that deed
lease
be
would be-
held, that deed be held by them.
And that would be held in
Yes,
escrow by
that's-
Mount until then.
Because without that, I...
Yeah,
Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
yes, that's,
Support.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menigini?
No.
Mr. Oja?
yes.
Okay, we'll move on to the approval, USDA RD sewer project change order number 3. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, this particular change order is an extension of time to complete the last remaining punch list items plus We do need to include a guardrail off of Elm Street. That particular guardrail was due to a wall being taken out due to the project, and protection, of course, of private property is something that we needed to do. We had asked Baco to provide an estimate to put that guardrail in place. Their estimate is $5,670. So we're looking for approval for the extension through July 31st, 2018 to put this guardrail in for a price of $5,670.
Was the retention wall supposed to come out as part of the project?
No. No, this is just something that happened because of situation within this area that we needed to take that wall out because of the project.
And that house is very close.
It's very close, yeah, and if you look at it, the street is coming down, the road is actually, it's got the first floor and the second floor, the road is actually up close to the second floor. I mean, it's down in a hollow, so it needs a guardrail, absolutely needs a
For
guardrail.
protection of that house.
What type of guardrail are we talking here? Like the one
Standard
you see on
guardrail, yeah, standard guardrail. Now, remember that.
Are you gonna have that curved thing on the end?
Yeah, we're going to come all the way around, and we'll have that's required. Also, remember that this particular part of the project is being handled through it's the water and sewer project because they're together, but it's handled on the sewer side, and all of this money is actually grant money.
I don't have a problem with that. I think you need it there.
Well, it has to be there, there's no question
Yeah.
about that.
Anybody else? If not, we need a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve the change order number 3 for USDA ARD Water and Sewer Project for Baco for an additional $5,670, bringing the final contract price to $4,755,324.62, and a project extension to July 31st, 2018.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
No.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to approval 2018 city-owned property for sale listing.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. The sale price, 2018 sale price list is put together for you tonight. This is the same listing that we've had. I think the last time we approved this particular list was in 2014. Jim and I went through the city-owned properties, the pricing that we had from 2014, and there has been no movement on any of the pricing upwards or down. So we're going to continue with the same pricing. The one thing we did add were the 10 lots out at a Oak Crest subdivision, and we put those lots in at $29,500. So that does not include, well, we're right on the road, so the electric extension would go directly to those lots. And any of the future lots behind it, that we'd have to talk about actually doing a transmission extension to get back into those areas. So this one is actually going to be dealt with like we normally do when the line runs by someone's house and they extend it into their property.
So there's no extra charge for that?
Well,
Or is there?
depending on where they put the house, they get 150 feet.
Okay.
And then, so they'll deal with us on a case-by-case basis.
Would that be underground, Ray?
Most likely, would be underground. And then we deal, like I said, we deal with the individual property owner, whoever buys, and then they can make that decision at the time.
Well, I know most people out in the brush, they prefer underground.
Yeah.
Any other questions, or do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that the 2018 property listing be approved.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. Move on to the approval traffic control order.
This particular item, Traffic Control Order 18-01, is to reduce the speed limit on Strawberry Lake Road by the park area from 25 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour. This was a request that was brought to our office and then forwarded on to the police department.
Are we having problems down there with speeders?
There's periodic problems with speeders. We don't have the dust problems that we had before, but now we get some pretty good speeds sometimes through there.
Is there quite a few tickets coming out of there?
No, I think it's complaints, but probably not in the area, exactly in the area at the time. I think it just helps to highlight that you need to slow down.
I see the 4x trail goes right by there too, that's pretty close.
Yeah,
Well, it's back out the way enough, I guess, because they fly through there.
yeah, they come across the road by the softball field. And
Yeah.
then they go in by the tracks, so they stay off the road, because they're not supposed to be on the road.
There's actually, isn't there a speed limit sign at the end of it right now that's posted 10 miles an hour?
Right, without a traffic control order.
But with the traffic control order, you'll be able to ticket.
Yes, correct.
Well, that place is gonna get busier and busier once that ball field is put in, so I think it's pretty much of a no-brainer.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that traffic control order TC 18-01 be approved.
Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
We'll move on to approval, Sturgeon Falls Hydro Runner Replacement Project Schedule Revision.
Okay, this particular item has come up due to some changes we had to make in our schedule at the hydro for the runner project. When we did our annual inspection, unit number 2, which was going to be handled next spring for the replacements, was actually in such a poor condition that we felt that we could not put that back into production. Unit 1, which was actually scheduled first for replacement, was in better condition and felt that we could operate Unit 1 rather than Unit 2. We met with contractors and worked out a schedule which would start with Unit 2 versus Unit 1. In this particular case, we're requesting council to approve the revised schedule because there is some contract, like I mentioned in my reports, there's some contract requirements for the contractor, and because unit number 1 has the 4 runners versus unit 2 only has the 2 runners, that next spring, when they get in to work on unit number 1, it might take them a little bit longer. So what we want to do is make sure that we're all in agreement on the schedule. The second item that actually has come up, and this just came up on this past week, and then on Friday, late Friday after the packets went out, I did receive email giving some additional information, but there was a question on there's a rail I-beam that was used in the past for removing equipment from unit number 2 across the powerhouse. That particular beam is not certified, and there was a question mark as to whether or not it can even be used at this point. So if you see the email that we handed out, there's a proposal from our contractor to install a certified rail system that would allow them, and it would be permanent. Another question we have, though, is, and this does have schedule implications, that's why we're bringing it to you tonight as well. We also have to consider, is there even time, or is there time to consider having the current rail that's in the plant certified?
That's what I was wondering.
And we were trying to poke around a little bit today to find out if there was somebody around that could actually do that and do it quickly. I believe We have contractor representatives here this evening, and I'm more than happy to, let's have them come up and we could have this conversation, so we make sure that our biggest concern is schedule. And so, obviously price as well, cost, but schedule is important because they're scheduled to come in on July 16th to start removing equipment out of unit number 2. So I'm going to turn this over to council, and you guys can ask the questions.
Can we get somebody in to certify that? Do you know?
According to the crane report analysis, that underhung monorail system could not be approved or certified for the amount of weight we need to remove the shaft and runner assembly from unit number 2, which is an approximate weight of 7.5 tons for the assembly to remove it, get it across the powerhouse, and then the same to bring the shaft and new runner in.
How do we know that without the certification of it, or do you know just because of the
Well,
size?
according to
And
the crane report, they wouldn't even deem to certify that underhung monorail at all.
What we did is we reviewed the report, the analysis that was done on the bridge crane by Mead and Hunt, and they referenced the monorail, and it was not certified. So we're going off of the language that was in that report, but they didn't do any analysis on it. They did a visual and wouldn't certify it without further evaluation.
is that what it is? Do we need to do further evaluation, or they wouldn't certify it because they said it was not certifiable?
They won't certify it. Not for the support of the weight we need to remove the GE Unit 2 shaft and runner assembly. So my name is Mike Young. I work for Hydro Consulting and Maintenance Services. I'm representing Leadestro on the project. I'll be there along with Stephen Denicourt from Leadestro to lead the project. I have Paul Corrigan and Jan LeCount with me that represent C.R. Meyer Construction. Jan is going to be in charge of designing, doing a final design and proposal for the beam span bridge, we're calling it, that'll span the powerhouse from the east to the west door. And we'll actually be able to land that shaft and runner assembly and roll it across the powerhouse along with some aid just from using the main girders on the overhead crane beam. That's why it's come to this point as far as safety, protection of the generators themselves, and protecting the new components as they go in on Unit 2.
This monorail, whatever you call it, it's going to be permanent?
No, this would be a temporary structure, and it would also be something you could basically unbolt, disassemble, and keep in storage and use in the future.
For just number 2, or could it be adapted to something else?
Pardon me?
For just number 2, or could it be adapted
It could
to
be
be used
adapted
for
to
something?
also if you have to do further work on Unit 3 or 4 and get heavy components in and out of the...
Got pictures?
This is a draft that I sketched up. This is a picture of the temporary bridge that would go across. What you're looking at here down below, this support system is to support your temporary iron that you have in place right now. This right here, this single leg up here would be temporary to support the center of the bridge.
Looks expensive.
So this is not a final design or, say, a final proposal price, because we discussed some simplifications that we could make, and want to make this as cost-worthy as possible, but I think it's our only option to do the job safely.
Do you have a ballpark figure, or you're not qualified to spit one out?
I don't know the ballpark figure,
I
but
believe there's been one submitted, is that correct?
$48,295.
Yeah, I have it.
value on that.
I missed that.
I think we can actually reduce that.
We set it on your desk when you came in.
Oh, okay, I missed that
I
one.
think the big reason to go to the bridge design instead of using any kind of monorail support was just the lack of information on the bridge itself. I mean, just even material certifications for the crane rails, it's just a lot of missing information that Dean Hunt didn't really gather in the report. I don't know if they did a full detailed analysis of that crane rail and how far they go into it, but just judging by the information.
On the bridge crane rail?
Yeah.
That's certified.
We know the bridge crane rail girders are rated for 20 tons and certified.
But the hoist is not in the model.
The trolley hoist is not.
No, the hoist is
Neither
not.
the added on underhung monorail structure, so.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the structural on the bridge crane is
Yeah, because we
is
did
good.
that,
Yeah,
right?
that's-
We had that.
That's what they certified. Yeah. How is this pinned on the end? I mean, how are you setting this up? It's going across the openings of a powerhouse.
There's east and west entry doors with
Yep.
the 6-foot mezzanine sidewalk, so to speak, catwalk. The beams would actually set on that,
On the catwalk?
on the catwalk, but underneath we'll have vertical supports under the 18-inch I-beams that support that mezzanine catwalk. And then there'll be a center vertical support for the bridge beam structure we're calling this, for the span.
And the catwalk girders can support that?
Embedded.
It has 6 embedded 18-inch I-beams into the powerhouse wall. We intend to not use that as the main support structure.
No, I mean, did you do a section on the supports on the platform itself?
Thickness or?
Just compression?
Design?
Yeah.
There's been some preliminary design done. Like I said, we put this together fairly quick.
Right, I understand.
To try to get the information in front of me. I did have it run past our engineers, and the design that we were proposing should meet all the requirements. And I can gather the information on that, you know, calculations and all the extra data. I'm sure you're going to need it eventually. I just didn't have the time to gather all that information.
We are trying to expedite this as soon as we can because we do have a disassembly start date of July 16th, and we know how important it is to try to stay on that schedule.
So you're using a half-inch plate?
Yes, so that draft is based on an optimum size work platform that basically I would feel would be necessary. It's not necessarily a minimum size that we could use. The minimum size would be very adequate for the job. So I can work with Mike and Paul to reduce the size, the weight, and probably cost.
Are you gonna have, I mean, what kind of a system are you gonna use to transfer the equipment across that plate?
On top of that work platform there, we're going to place down some C-channel.
Yep,
Those will
okay.
be tacked down, and then there'll be a set of skates that ride inside that C-channel to contain the,
Kind of like Hillman rollers?
yeah,
Correct.
Then we'll have a saddle built for the runner section of the skirt. So
Okay.
that runner would sit right in
There'll
there.
be a cradle for the runner, which is 74 inches.
Is that cradle gonna be multifaceted where it could be used for other sized piece of equipment?
it could probably be adapted for that.
Yeah,
We could design that into it.
it would be made for these runners, the diameter of the skirt.
There'd also be a smaller cradle for the coupling end, which is a
We could just do
21
multiple
inch
cradles.
diameter flange.
Okay.
And we'll basically roll that thing across the powerhouse and have it, suspended somewhat with rigging off just the main beam girders of it. So
Where is this gonna go, where you're going into the plant, or once you get into the plant?
You basically walk off that, kind of step over the bulkhead that's right
Yep.
there. And just when you're walking down the steps, this thing will be built up, so we can take that runner, it's not going to stay at one elevation. So it's going to go from one piece of grading to the other piece of grading. The bulkheads would have to be removed temporarily.
Uh-huh.
Doors would also have to be left open, I'm not sure if that's any kind of huge security.
yeah, unfortunately, the doors swing inward, so the I-beams would sit above the actual bottom of the door level.
Right.
So, we could put up some temporary plywood doors on the outside that would still be able to close up the powerhouse at night. Because this would have to stay in place until we remove the shaft and runner from Unit 2, and then wait for the new runners to arrive, or the machine, get the new runner on the shaft and bring it back in, so,
And this one in any way interfere with operations?
no. We can do it all without interrupting the operation of either one.
The other positive with this is all that material could stay on site, be used for any kind of future work that we may need.
Yeah, it would become a
City property.
block fixture, basically, for the future too, in case you needed to do that and not rely on the overhead crane for dismantling in Unit 3 or 4.
Are we gonna, just use this for Unit 2, or are we gonna need it for all of the runners?
We only need it for the shaft and the 2 runners on Unit 2 at this point.
Yeah, you're basically getting all the equipment to that east door, so that then you can use the system that we have
Right.
to move it out.
You just gotta connect that link between the two exterior monorails is really what we're
Yeah.
trying to attempt here.
We deem this is only the most efficient and safe way to do that without possibly, having any kind of danger to damage the generators themselves or any of the new components that go in. Safety for the crew working and being able to manage that component in and out of the powerhouse. So this is our proposal we've come up with. It's not final in design or price, I would say, at this point, but I think we could do that by the end of this week. Correct.
We need the price if we're gonna approve it.
Yeah, the price is in the email.
That would really be our only way to stay on schedule with this.
My second page.
That's right here.
Continue the projected outline of the new schedule.
Right here, Ray?
I was at site
Yeah,
last
that's
week
it.
with the two tech guys from
They could, if they could design, they didn't do in-depth design to minimize the steel. They did a pretty conservative design, and they gave you a price, so I mean, the price could be lowered by economics of scale on steel.
The other part included, and Jan just reminded me that removal of the existing monorail is included in that price also. If you wanted to leave it up there, you could. It was the recommendation in that report that monorail got removed. That
We don't even have to bother with it.
put out of service, I think it was, that's up to you guys, right?
Yeah, and that wouldn't hinder, leaving it in place wouldn't hinder.
Well, there's a couple of issues of leaving the monorail. One is if it can't be certified, if it's not certified and can't be certified, then why have it?
I think that was the right.
You know, because you just leave it open for somebody to hook onto it, and you could have a problem. The second is that the main bridge crane is there for movement, basically, of the generators, to handle the generators. And so, I mean, I know we have to certify the block, the hook, the cabling, but there's an important function, for that bridge crane, if we have to remove those generators. Last fall, when we were talking about possibly rewinding, we would have had to remove that Westinghouse unit. And the monorail actually keeps it from making its complete transfer. So that was pointed out in the report. So.
And the main trolley really can't be used unless you do remove the under on the monorail. As far
Right.
as full travel.
Yep, for the full travel. So there is a problem with that, but, so it's council's, I guess, decision as to if we want us to search a different option or for sake of schedule, and I think that's a pretty solid option, and it is something that we would have for future projects. And there would it'd be fully certified, and we'd be able to, to use that over and over.
It would be certified, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're able to stamp that?
We're able to.
Yeah, you'll be able to stamp it. I mean, I'm sure it would have to have a structural stamp or,
We want to rate it for a minimum of 8 tons, basically. Which is of the other handling devices on the east and west side.
Any questions?
How long would it take to finalize that?
Pardon me?
To finalize a drawing and construct?
If I got the green light on that, probably, how detailed the drawings are you expecting? I mean, is it a full set of stamp drawings, or are you looking for calculations based on the weights that we are supplying for the beams? I guess there's a lot of information that we got. It depends on what information you want.
I guess more so just making sure the structure is going to work.
Verify that.
To verify it's going to work.
Under a week.
Okay. And then how long would it take to construct that?
We're looking at to fabricate it and install it in 6 days.
so you're right there at the window.
We're right there.
And I figure we have that start of the disassembly date week to also work on it, get it in place, because it's going to take us
that working week to get the crew on site, get them over to site, start taking off packing boxes and housing and stuff like that. So it gives us an extra week for them to actually be at site. They could be finishing the construction on that during the first disassembly week before we need to use it.
Brett, I think we would have to have official as-built drawings, stamped drawings on file. And especially assembly, you know, to make sure if the next time we use it, it's installed correctly. I mean, it's verified, you know, everything's there. We would have to have that for the file.
I would like to see final cost before I make a motion to approve it. That's what I'd just like to see, a final cost.
But if we do that, we're gonna be behind, right?
Know that
We'll be behind if we wait. But we could have a special
I guess
meeting.
if we could get a final design in place that would be approved by Jan and his crew, and reduce the cost on the preliminary value that you have, I think we could be ready by the middle of next week.
I think the slight problem is if we're gonna try to cut the price by cutting some of these, you know, go to 6 feet wide, say 8 feet wide, but then we need a full set of stamp drawings. That's gonna be a little bit different scenario. I mean, I could provide calcs, material sizes, beam sizes, connection, some connection details, but to put that on a full set of stamp drawings is gonna be a lot more extensive than what we ever did proposed. I can definitely get the information, get the price on that, to have that done, but, I mean, even Mead and Hunt information that they got, I mean, it's just not a quick turnaround. Throwing it out there, you know.
That takes a little extra time.
It does, to do a full set of stamp drawings, we're not talking about turnaround for any engineering firm. But, you know, if I could provide the calculations and beam size and material connections, at that point, maybe, so, you know, to you guys, at that point, can we get approval to move ahead with fabrication while the design engineer is working on the final drawings?
I could get with Scott.
That might be
I could
it.
get with Scott and see if we could help out on that end.
Okay.
I think that would be the big thing, you know, maybe not having the set of drawings at that point, but, you know,
I like to have
be able to have
price.
it on file, let's call it, or record, or whatever, I think is valuable.
Okay.
You know, so I'd still like a final price, let's call it, you know.
I agree with
before
you,
I
it's
make a
hard.
motion on that, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would need a final price for your budget for sure.
Yeah, a full set of stamp drawings, that does throw a little, like I said, a different scenario into the whole thing.
But I think that a full set of drawings is valuable.
I do too.
I mean, that's something that you'll have, I mean.
Right.
It's not a complicated structure, so
No,
not like we're gonna have a lot of blueprints or anything.
Yeah.
But it would be adequate for,
There's going to be, you know, all these engineers are going to go on site, document all existing conditions, existing structures, beam sizes that are there, and say, we know it's W18. I don't think anybody verified what size the W18 was, so there's a lot of extra information that's going to need to be gathered to be able to set of drawings.
Cost-wise for the full set of drawing?
I don't have a good idea right now. I'd probably really turn that over to an engineering firm to detail that. Either home engineering or something like that. They're going to dive right in and get all the information.
let me give Scott and Steve a call.
Yeah, maybe they
Throw
can.
that out too.
Yeah, maybe they have somebody on staff that can just come here.
I know we have a small engineering office in York, Pennsylvania that might be able to help out on that.
And if Mike can you can give them the information, they may not need to make a site visit, we can detail stuff out right on site and send it to them back there.
Do you have enough information on the 6 18-inch I-beams that come out of the powerhouse structure and then supported by the 6-inch channel underneath? Does that give you enough to?
It does.
And then the
To
4-inch
do what we
concrete?
need to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it does.
But really, we're not relying on that for all the supports, since we'll have our vertical supports to the floor, so. So this is kind of a preliminary introduction to try to get to this point, get it expedited as soon as possible to stay on your
I mean, that's quite a height.
schedule, so.
For those columns, that's quite a height.
Yeah, I think that what we proposed will be more than sufficient to handle the weights that we're looking at. But I completely agree, I think it's got to be on paper.
Yeah. What's your pleasure?
I'd like to see a cost before we make a motion, and whether it be a special meeting.
When do you think we'd have a cost?
Can we get together and work out the final cost by the end of the week?
Yeah.
At least get that
And
here.
then, because we should have engineering costs turned around really quick. Our costs won't take much to change.
We can revise Jan's final
We're
structure.
going to go to 6 foot wide instead of 8.
And then schedule, you know, we can schedule a meeting right now. I mean, if you.
Yeah, we'll schedule a meeting right now if you guys know a problem.
I mean, when's the earliest you think you'd have?
Because we don't
the
want to
cost?
hold this up either.
Thursday, Friday. I mean, we're looking at either Thursday or Friday.
Not this week, right?
Yeah, this week.
Everybody's got their 4th of July.
Yeah, I won't be here. Thursday and Friday.
Monday?
Monday is better because I'll be gone.
I
Joe,
won't be
you
here.
got something? You
Yeah, I
got
won't be here
something?
Monday, but you guys can meet without me. I can meet without.
Okay. Monday afternoon?
Sure.
Monday at 3?
3?
3 work?
It's good with me.
That's good with me.
9 to 3 o'clock?
Yep.
Yeah?
So I was also going to let Ray know that Lita Strotex and myself completed all run testing data needed on both units last week with the help of the operators, Ken and Ralph. So they're all good with that, on collecting the database they need for both units.
I think we have to wait to approve schedule. You know, originally I was just gonna have you approve the schedule based on starting on the 16th, but I think we
Is
better wait
this,
to make
is
sure.
this gonna hold it back, you think?
Well, I know Mr. Steve Denicourt, Lita Strode, is pretty strict on trying to keep that schedule of disassembly to start on the 16th, so I'll have to have a discussion with Scott on Monday and Stephen about that. I would know that by Monday also.
Okay.
Well, I think we should hold off until Monday to know what the effects are gonna be.
Absolutely.
And if you have a change, bring it in, so we all have something, because Ray won't be here. So we have something to approve.
And maybe I can get some information before the end of the week to help us with that.
Can I keep that sketch?
Yes, go ahead.
I can make copies for anybody if they want.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, guys. I'm sorry we couldn't go forward, but it's kind of hard when we don't have the price, you know,
It's all been on a pretty quick
Yeah.
path here, so just gotta get the information.
and hopefully this won't hold you up too much.
I'll make a motion, we postpone the vote on Sturgeon Falls Hydro Water Replacement Project Schedule 1 Revision Number 1 until July 9th.
Support.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
fellas.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to, let's see here. Electric Department parts purchase.
Okay, this particular item came up late last week from request from our shop foreman, from Rick Schreiber, and the PTO failed on electric truck number 203, and he put together some pricing, made some contacts, and he's requesting approval to go to utility sales and service for parts for $1,604.40. That is, that includes shipping, if you ask about shipping. I think that it has $0 on shipping, and he told them to include everything, and they had $0 on shipping, so he's gonna hold them to that.
Okay.
And he's gonna do this himself?
Yes.
We've done business with utility sales and service before out of Appleton?
Oh, yeah, they are very,
Lots.
yeah, we do lots of
Yeah,
work with
okay,
them.
how about UP International Trucks? Have we done much business with them?
Yeah, we do business with
Well,
all of them, actually.
I guess where I'm going for a couple $100, I'd rather keep it local.
But his request is to go to utility sales.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I think for for this type of work with the aligned trucks that Utility Sales specializes. So,
They do a lot of work on our trucks too, don't they?
yeah. Okay.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, utility sales and service be approved to provide parts to fix the power takeoff on electric department bucket truck 203 for a price not to exceed $1,604.40.
Support.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
We'll move on to approval. I don't even know how to say that. Excavator repair.
The Komatsu excavator. Yeah, we need repairs for our excavator. Again, he searched for multiple quotes. The industrial remanufacturing services out of Crystal Falls had a low responsive quote of $1,366.38. There's also, we're estimating, they didn't give us a price of shipping, but they couldn't, they said they couldn't because they didn't have the part on the shelf and they needed the weight of the part. So they said somewhere around $50. We're requesting you approve 75, just to be conservative. So the approval amount that we're requesting is $1,441.38. We did ultimately get a quote from this Roland Equipment for $2,000. They were a little less direct on supply, so we have a strong recommendation to go with this IRS out of Crystal Falls.
Do we have a motion on this?
I'll make a motion, industrial remanufacturing service be approved to provide the repairs in the Komatsu excavator bucket cylinder for a price not to exceed $1,366.38 plus an estimated amount of $75 for shipping for a total not to exceed $1,441.38.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Anyone wishing to address the council on any item of interest shall do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Bill Adams, 507 Second Avenue. After all the work that was done last year with the streets and sewer and everything, how come the blow lines look so crappy? They are really crappy too. I'm surprised you haven't had complaints before because...
We've had plenty of complaints, Bill.
I think the grass and the weeds are trying to fight to see who gets control. Just bring that up.
All right.
I've seen a lot of it too. If you drive around, you'll see it.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, we'll move on to council and mayor comments. Mr. Pop?
I have nothing for tonight.
Brett?
I have nothing for tonight.
Lee?
Nothing.
Jeremy? Nothing. I would like to wish everybody a happy 4th of July, and hopefully everybody stays safe. And that's all I have. Grant?
Nobody wants to listen to an attorney, but very quickly, I saw the traffic control order and it occurred to me, we had put together a school liaison safety team. School, surprisingly now, it's July 2nd, we're right around the corner. I'd like to try to get together again and follow up with that before and try to get ahead of the game. And when I saw the 50-mile-per-hour school safety, the area over there with that discussion, it occurred to me that we really hadn't made the type of progress I think we were all hoping for with maybe addressing some of those issues in front of the auditorium and some of the congestion up in the school, and just trying to think ahead a little bit here in the middle of summer and see if we can get that focus back in place before school starts again. And I'm just the guy that enforces the things and doesn't make the policy, but just kind of a gentle reminder or request, maybe set up another time and let's see if we can come up with some ideas, if anything, to address some of those issues.
Can you,
We have a meeting set up for July 12th. I sent that out.
There we go.
I think it was in the executive memo.
Thank you, City Manager Anderson, for being on top of things like usual.
Mr. Anderson?
I don't have anything else.
Trish? Nope. No. I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Support.
Is that Pop or Kramer?
Yeah.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. Meeting adjourned.
Hey, where's the property at, that Lake Mary?